Eventually, during the Clinton years, our government made a secret pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan to end the chaos in Afghanistan by introducing a new force called the Taliban.
Testify and explain why it was so urgent to pursue Sergeant Bergdahl's release, why we decided to move forward with the detainee transfer, and why it was fully consistent with U.S. law, our nation's interests, and our military's core values. Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, I want to make one fundamental point. I would never sign any document or make any agreement, agree to any decision that I did not feel was in the best interest of this country. Nor would the President of the United States, who made the final decision with the full support of his national security team. I recognize that the speed with which we moved in this case has caused great frustration, legitimate questions, and concern. We could have done a better job, of keeping you informed. But I urge you to remember two things. This was an extraordinary situation. First, we weren't certain that we would transfer those detainees out of Guantanamo until we had Sergeant Bergdahl in hand. And second, we had Sergeant Bergdahl in hand only a few hours after making the final arrangements. There are legitimate questions about this prisoner exchange, and Congress obviously has an important constitutional role and right and responsibility to play in all of our military and intelligence matters. As a former member, Mr. Chairman, of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the Council on Foreign Relations, I appreciate the vital role Congress plays in our national security. And I will present to this committee, within the limits of an open, unclassified hearing, and in more detail in the classified hearing, everything I can to answer your questions and assure you, this committee, the American people, that this prisoner exchange was done legally. It was substantial mitigation of risk to our country and in the national interests of this country. Let's start with Sergeant Bergdahl's status as a member of the United States Army. He was held captive by the Taliban in the Haqqani network for almost 5 years. He was officially listed as missing capture. No charges were ever brought against Sergeant Bergdahl, and there are no charges pending now. Our entire national security apparatus, the military, the intelligence community, and the State Department, pursued every avenue to recover Sergeant Bergdahl, just as the American people and this Congress and the Congresses before you expected us to do. In fact, this committee knows there were a number of congressional resolutions introduced and referred to this committee directing the President of the United States to do everything he could to get Sergeant Bergdahl released from captivity. We never stopped trying to get him back, as the Congress knows that, because he is a soldier in the United States Army. Questions about Sergeant Bergdahl's capture are, as Mr. Smith noted, and you, Mr. Chairman, are separate from our effort to recover him, because we do whatever it takes to recover any and every U.S. service member held in captivity. This pledge is woven into the fabric of our nation and our military. As former Central Command Commander Marine General Jim Mattis recently put it, bottom line, quote, "The bottom line is we don't leave people behind. That is the beginning and that is the end of what we stand for. We keep faith with the guys who sign on, and that is all there is to it." End of quote. As for the circumstances surrounding his captivity, as Secretary of the Army McHugh and Army Chief of Staff Odierno will review in this country. No family deserves this. I hope there will be some sober reflection on people's conduct regarding this issue and how it relates to the Bergdahl family. In 2011, the Obama administration conducted talks with the Taliban on a detainee exchange involving the same 5 Taliban detainees that were ultimately transferred after the release of Sergeant Bergdahl. 2011. These talks, which Congress was briefed on, some of you in this room were in those briefings, I understand, which Congress was briefed on in November of 2011 and in January of 2012, were broken off by the Taliban in March of 2012. We have not had direct talks with the Taliban since this time. In September of 2013, the government of Qatar offered to serve as an intermediary. And in November of last year, we requested that the Taliban provide a new proof-of-life video of Sergeant Bergdahl. In January of this year, we received that video, and it was disturbing. Some of you may have seen the video. It showed a deterioration in his physical appearance and mental state compared to previous videos. Our entire intelligence community carefully analyzed every part of it and concluded that Sergeant Bergdahl's health was poor and possibly declining.
I got it wrong. I said the FBI when in fact the CIA was the one to take it out of the talking points.
The President's decision to move forward with the transfer of these detainees was a tough call. I supported it. I stand by it. As Secretary of Defense, I have the authority and the responsibility, as has been noted here, to determine whether detainees, any detainees, but these specific detainees at Guantanamo Bay can be transferred to the custody of another country. I take that responsibility, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, damn seriously, as I do any responsibility I have in this job.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Secretary Chuck Hagel, not only for the introduction, but Chuck, for your lifetime of service. From Sergeant in the Army to Secretary of Defense, but always a man who carries with you the memory of friends and fallen heroes from Vietnam.